Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. When you shelter in place like we've been doing for a while now, you get to think about stuff, sometimes really deep stuff, that you perhaps hadn't had the time to do before. Things like the meaning of life. Now, there probably aren't many of us that are monks. I'm certainly not, and I doubt if, the vast majority, I would imagine the vast majority of you are not monks. So we have trouble summoning sessions of silent thought for more than 30 seconds, I think could be safe to say for most of us, even though we've been sheltering in place. So we need help. So in moments like this, I turn to my companion to help me in moments, and it's Alexa. So let's ask her real quick. Hey Alexa, what is the meaning of life?
Eleanor Roosevelt said, "The purpose of life is to live it, to taste experience to the utmost, to reach out eagerly and without fear, for newer and richer experience."
Good for you, Eleanor. I had asked Alexa earlier, and her response to that question about the meaning of life was, the meaning of life depends upon the life in question. And then she said, 42 is a good approximation. And I'm thinking, 42? Did she mean that 42 was like the prime of life? If so, I'm already 18 years past that. Yikes. That's no good. Then I thought, well, maybe 42 is, she was referring to Jackie Robinson's baseball number. And it's number 42 on his jersey. If anyone led a meaningful life, it was Jackie Robinson, breaking the color barrier in the world of baseball. But what she just said about Eleanor Roosevelt, the purpose of life is to live it and taste experience to the utmost. I like that. It's just, it's hard to experience life right now to the utmost, right? It is. With the shelter in place. Especially when perhaps for some of us the most meaningful thing we feel we are doing today is, being able to partake of those little Debbie snacks that are in the food pantry. Good eating. Yeah. Anyway, but if we do remember Eleanor Roosevelt's life and when she lived, and oh my, what she experienced, for her to be able to say those words concerning life and embracing it and doing it without fear and for a richer experience, it's pretty profound. I admire her answer all the more. We're in this forced solitude right now. Some of us more than others. It got me thinking about Superman's Fortress of Solitude, right? Have we all thought about what Superman does in the Fortress of Solitude? Does he think about deep things like the meaning of life? Doubtful. He had too many distractions there. He had a supercomputer there. He had an alien zoo there. He had a laboratory there. He had robotic duplicates there. He even had an apartment for Supergirl. So now I think there were too many distractions for Superman in this Fortress of Solitude to really ponder such things as the meaning of life. Real solitude is absence of human interaction, removal really of all distraction, if you will. People who experience it unwillingly for extended periods of time say like a prisoner in solitary confinement, they have described it as the worst possible abuse. It's an awful thing, solitary. That is what the late Senator John McCain said. He had spent more than 2 years in isolation during his more than 5 years of being a prisoner of war in Vietnam, enduring physical torture, but he said the solitary, it crushes your spirit. Are his words. And it weakens your resistance more effectively than any other form of mistreatment. The late American journalist Terry Anderson, right? He was kidnapped by the Hezbollah and held hostage in Lebanon from March of 85 to December of 91, much of it in solitary confinement. He struggled with depression and with despair and what he called disintegration. Basically, his word for it, as he felt he was slipping into insanity. He said he would rather have the worst companion in the world than no companion at all. No wonder American advocates for prison inmates work long and hard to have solitary confinement be declared unconstitutionally cruel and unusual punishment. We're social creatures. We need each other. Most of us can't live with any semblance of happiness unless we have some contact with others. But there are brave souls willingly seeking out long periods of time, even lifetimes of solitude. Some are antisocial or disillusioned with society and they just pull away. Some just long to be in communion with nature and to live in vast open spaces. Others seek solitude for spiritual reasons, like monks and nuns and mystics and hermits. I've long admired them, been fascinated by their call to holy silence, contemplation and prayer. There's a difference between, though, admiring that lifestyle and doing it, okay? Our modern minds are so inundated with images and data, so much each day that it's more than what our ancestors were exposed to, over a course of a decade. It's amazing the amount of information and distraction and that is sent our way. We struggle with quietude. I've attempted to practice silence and contemplative prayer. I've yet, though, to really experience real silence for any long period of time. It's only been for the briefest moments I think I've maybe tapped into that solitude. My brain won't turn off long enough to allow inner silence and God's deeper and quieter voice within that silence to blossom. And that's sad. Spiritual masters who try to amplify such prayer to amateurs like me, counsel me and others like me, to keep your mind from going everywhere, keep repeating a sacred word or perhaps a phrase from Scripture and just keep repeating it to focus your mind and your heart. And when random thoughts and ideas and anxiety and to-do lists intrude, the spiritual masters recommend letting them float by like debris on a river. And then gently return to the sacred word in silence. Unfortunately, I often find myself washed down the river with all those ideas and those to-do lists, with all that debris. And Either that or I just end up falling asleep. It's like Jesus is there. Come on, Steve. Can't you tarry with me? Can't you hang with me at least for 5 minutes? The Master's cautioned against feeling guilty about all this or being impatient. Guilt and impatience wage war against silence like distractions do. The God of eternity, though, is patient with us. We need to be patient with ourselves. There's always tomorrow. We can try again. In an article entitled, "We Are All Monks Now," a recent article on the American Magazine, it was written by Gregory Hillis. And this is pretty much what he wrote. He wrote, because of COVID-19, many of us are living in a way like monks. We're enclosed and isolated in our homes. Unlike monks, we didn't ask for this situation, nor is it one that most of us were spiritually prepared for, right? However, we can turn to the monks for some guidance, I think. Hillis spoke of 3 American Trappists that he spoke with. American Trappists are monks, also referred to as Cistercians of the strict observance. They come from the 6th century rule of Saint Benedict. Their lifestyle sounds about as alien as their name, right? To most of us. These Trappist monks pray and work mostly in silence. They work together, they gather together, they sing psalms together up to 8 times a day. And the cycle of songs that they sing begins at 2 or 3 in the morning. They welcome and feed visitors. That's part of their ancient tradition of offering hospitality to travelers and to pilgrims, to refugees. The author, Thomas Merton, perhaps you've heard of him. He was a Trappist monk. Having spent some time of my own in monasteries here in Jerome, Idaho, in Israel, in a monastery south of Portland, and in a couple actually convents in Pittsburgh or in the Pennsylvania area, I will say this: a life utterly devoted to silence and prayer and service is an awesome thing. I can remember on one retreat I took to the convent in Greensburg, Pennsylvania. It was a silent retreat. And I found myself talking out loud to myself, or muttering or humming. And inevitably a nun would either put her finger to her mouth as she looked at me, or just give me that nun look in her eyes. Such silence was challenging. Is as foreign to the modern life I was used to than I could ever imagine. I mean, I knew after leaving that convent on that particular visit, I couldn't wait to get into my car and crank up Bachman Turner Overdrive on the radio, But even we BTO fans can learn something from the monastics, from these monks and nuns, and apply it to our lives, our busy lives, especially during this time of pandemic. In each of the monasteries, I found silence and stillness that I think can help us not only to listen to God more intently, but also to each other more fully and lovingly. Monasteries are communities where individuals must submit to the needs of the whole. So they need to learn to listen not only to God, but to each other. As hard as our social distancing can be, it is a sacrifice for the greater good, dear friends, okay? This isn't just about, I'm healthy, I can fight this off, I'm young, I don't need this distancing, I'll get together with people. It isn't about that attitude, okay? Or fostering that kind of attitude of your great independence. Wearing a mask and social distancing is an act of love that says to our most vulnerable in society, I see you. I see your worth, your value. I care about you and your needs. And we're in this together. That spirit is so alive in the monasteries and convents I've been in. If we can imitate monastic life by being present and attentive to one another during our temporary shelter in place, it's great. But if we can emerge from this shelter in place circumstance in which we find ourselves, if we can emerge from this being more attentive to the needs of each other and truly listening, oh my, what a gift that will be for society and for this world. Are you feeling anxious and despondent? Please hear me. It will end. Till then, perhaps you've been given a rare opportunity to quiet your heart and mind for a greater purpose. To listen. And you may discover something new about the meaning of life. For in the silence of your heart, God does speak. God bless you, and thank you for making my life more meaningful. God bless you.